Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Flint. I'm Sue Owen Kinsey, a member of this church and the worship associate for today, and I would like to welcome everybody who's visiting us out there in cyberspace. And if you are here on a Sunday, please join us for coffee hour on Zoom. That starts at 11:30. The Zoom code will be shown on our PowerPoint that we'll show later, and is also available on our website. Please come and join us. Our speaker will be there to answer some questions about the service. If you have questions about UUism, we have people there that will be helpful for that, and we might even have somebody that can tell you something about gardening if you need that. Our ministers are the Reverend Lynn and Jerry Kirk, and they're going to be out of pulpit for the next 2 weeks. So in their place, we have a variety of speakers. Our service this week is given by Matthew Pargeter-Villarreal, a recent Masters of Divinity graduate from Brite Divinity School with a concentration in sexual and gender justice and a candidate for ministry with UUA. He serves as a chaplain at Baylor's All Saints Medical Center in Fort Worth, Texas, and Matthew and his husband Gabriel are currently living in Comfort, Texas. And this sounds like an interesting one. Now, if you are not familiar with UU faith, let me tell you, it is a hopeful one. Here's some of our main beliefs. The inherent worth and dignity of every person. Justice, equity, and compassion for all human relations. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to a spiritual growth in our congregations. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations. And the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Respect for the interdependent of all existence of which we are a part. To me, those are wonderful, hopeful goals. I won't say we meet them, but it's something we try to work for every day to do just a little bit better. Now, I have some quick announcements. For UU Vote News, watch your e-updates for details on how you can get to help out with Get Out the Vote. We're doing a good job in recognizing what's wrong with the country, and we really like complaining a lot. So now is our time to get out there and act. The UU Social Justice Network has a brief online training, and your e-update will tell you what is there. Also, we are having gatherings, masked, social distance, safe, park gatherings, and they're at various parks throughout Genesee County. Bring something to eat if you want to, bring your own chair, and have a conversation and see somebody's face. Masked, but it's still your face. Check your e-updates or call, and we can tell you where these will be. Also, if you happen to notice, nobody has come to your home and passed a plate to ask for donations. That doesn't mean that we are not accepting them. We will accept them in any shape, form you want to give them. There's a button on the website that says Donate Here. We take PayPal. We take other methods of automatic payments. Those of you that have pledges, thank you very much for continuing to pay your pledges. And if you want to add a little extra, we'll take that too. And we even still know how to handle a check if you send one of those in. Now, we will have a Prelude by Jennifer Howard. you'll join with us now in lighting our chalice. In the mystery of life about us, there is light. It gives us a place to be, to grow, to rejoice. It opens the pathway to love, and in this place of friendship, there is freedom. Let this light we kindle go before us, strong in hope, wide in goodwill, inviting the day to come. And if you'll join us now in reciting our covenant, these are words that our members came up with that we feel encapsulates our church. Recognizing the richness of diversity, the beauty and wonder of shared worship, the transforming power of love and service, we gather as a sacred community to freely seek knowledge and truth, to celebrate the fullness of life, and by our actions increase goodness and justice. Our opening words are by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Hope has as many lives as a cat or a king.
Holy mystery, silent presence, uncertain bearer of the weight of it all. In these quiet moments, we listen. We listen for the maybe still breathing, perhaps still whispering, faintest sign of the universal good. We listen between the cacophony of distractions, pulling us towards untruth and falsehood. We listen amidst the shrill cries of desperation, of we've had enough, of when will they stop killing my people, of how much more will the waters rise, of when will it be safe to return to my home, of how much longer can I hang on. We listen and we wait. Through the tumult of these days, we seek assurance. We seek the fulfillment of a promise made to ourselves, a promise made to those we have been stretched to call neighbor, a promise written and enshrined and yet unfulfilled. Help us, abiding mystery, to hang on, to hold on when all is in question, when all is in doubt. Help us to stay firm to our own commitments and our own promises. Lead us back into connection, back into the bonds of humanity that help us to know each other as beloved. May we continue listening. May we keep watch. May we beckon love and justice and mercy with our own whispers, with our own shouts, with our own cries, until all know themselves as part of the circle of love. Blessed be. Amen. Let me find peace within, so that I may be calm throughout. Let me find silence within, so that I may find compassion throughout. Let me be reminded that some things are worth waiting for. Let me be reminded that the journey is more important than reaching the destination. Let me see that non-doing is as much a part of life as the doing. Let me be reminded that it is in these moments of holding on that I can find quietude and renewal. It is within these times of inaction that I can find rest. It is in these times of emptiness that I can become full. Before I begin the sermon today, I would like to take a moment of silence for Jacob Blake, his wife and children, and the people of Kenosha, Wisconsin, as they struggle with a mixture of anger, sadness, and frustration over another shooting of an unarmed black man by police for no reason, and the fears and questions of when will enough be enough, and when will the violence cease. Amen. I feel like every conversation that I have had since social distancing began as a result of the coronavirus has either begun with or used as a conversation starter the question, what are you reading, watching, listening to that is getting you through and feeding your soul at this moment? Indeed, after nearly 5 months of my husband and I being at home in self-isolation, we have exhausted almost every possible recommendation that the Netflix algorithm can suggest for us. After watching Season 3 of Stranger Things, Season 2 of Umbrella Academy, every cooking competition show we could find, and after taking at least a good week to sit and process whatever the heck Tiger King was, we have found ourselves now going back to rewatching and rebinging some of our old favorites that we only usually come back to once a year, and admittedly, only out of boredom. But the question that people are asking simply goes beyond the what that people are reading or watching. The important part that people are trying to hear is what is getting you through and feeding your soul. We are all currently engaged in a collective struggle to adapt to a massive change in our way of life that none of us ever imagined. As simple as the request to stay at home and wear a mask is, the reality of the global health crisis that we are involved in has many of us filled with a sense of uncertainty. Some of us, especially extroverts like myself, are wondering whether or not we are ever going to go back to some semblance of a normal life again. And even if we do, is it going to be safe? What people are looking for in our answer to the question is a sense of hope, something that will allow them to feel good for at least a brief moment of 13 episodes, that things are going to be okay, and that the reality of life does not have to be quite as scary as it seems. One of the sources of hope and inspiration that I have kept coming back to at this time is a song entitled "All Will Be Well," written and performed by singer-songwriter and minister at First UU Church in Austin, Reverend Meg Barnhouse. The song is inspired by a time when Reverend Meg was reading the book Revelations of Divine Love by 14th century English mystic Julian of Norwich, famous for its immortal and inspirational quote, "All will be well, and all will be well, and all manner of things will be well." In the song, Reverend Meg has an imagined rhetorical conversation with Julian of Norwich in which she questions the possibility of that statement, fervently asking Julian if she has not considered the reality of things like sorrow, shame, pain, hunger, loneliness, disease, and cruelty. Unexpectedly, she receives a response from Julian, in which she names the feelings that Reverend Meg shares and alludes that she feels heavy from them as well. However, she also invites her to consider the beauty of what good that there is in the world, things like tenderness, love, friends, and the spirit. The song ends with the continued repetition of Julian's famous mantra, "All will be well, and all will be well, and all manner of things will be well." The song has become a go-to for me for the selfish reason that I am needing to hear those words right now. As much of an optimist as I consider myself, it is taking every ounce of my optimism to stay positive, and I would be lying if I said that I wasn't feeling depleted most days. It gives me the feeling that there are others who are bearing the weight of everything that is going on in the world, and there is no need to feel like I am bearing it alone, or that I have to bear it alone. It also serves as a reminder that I sometimes need to give myself, the one that I am usually concerned with giving to other people, that there is always a sense of hope in the world, depending upon where your perspective lies. Aside from it being one of my favorite songs and for the emotions it brings up, it is eerily fitting when you consider the incredible story of the person of Julian of Norwich that the song has as its inspiration. Julian of Norwich herself is a rather enigmatic figure. Not very much is known about her early life, including what her actual name was. Even the exact date of her birth and death are unknown. Most scholars agree that she was born in late 1342 and died sometime after 1416. She lived her entire life in the city of Norwich in eastern England, which was considered to be the second most important merchant city in England after London at the time. It was also, as a result of being a major center for trade and commerce, a city that was ravaged by the bubonic plague, the infamous Black Death that swept across Europe in the mid-14th century, and is estimated to have killed anywhere from 75 to 200 million people. It reached Norwich when Julian would have been around 6 years old, but evidence suggests that Julian came from a considerable amount of money and would have been sheltered at Carrow Abbey, southeast of the city, and educated by the Benedictine nuns who resided there. Some scholars believe, based on her writings, that Julian had some experience with being a mother, and although she survived the plague, it is suspected that her family and her children may have been casualties of it. Not much else is known about Julian's life until about the 1370s, when Julian would have been in her early 30s, and she presented herself to St. Julian's Church with the intention of becoming an anchoress. An anchoress is a person who, for religious reasons, withdraws from secular society so as to be able to lead an intensely prayer-oriented, ascetic, or Eucharist-focused life. Unlike hermits, they were required to take a vow of stability to remain in place, usually choosing to be enclosed in a cell that was attached to a church. When a woman chose the life of an anchoress, she would often undergo a religious ceremony similar to a funeral rite, where she would be considered dead to the world. For the rest of their lives, they would usually lead a life of confined isolation, poverty, and chastity. As bleak and austere as the life sounds, Julian would actually have continued to live a life that had a relative amount of freedom. She had financial support from the members of the church. She would have been permitted to make clothes to give to the poor, and she would have provided prayer, advice, and counsel to visitors. In fact, Julian was somewhat of a celebrity in her day, receiving visitors from prominent religious writers of the time, such as Marjorie Kempe and Walter Hilton. Yet, it is her revelations of divine love, considered to be the earliest surviving example of a book in the English language known to have been written by a woman, and the only surviving work of an English anchoress, that is perhaps her greatest legacy. It was written in 1373 and chronicles a time in Julian's life when she was seriously ill from an unidentified illness other than the Black Death, and was laying on what she believed to be her deathbed. Over the course of several hours in one night, she claims to have received 16 mystical visions, or showings as she called them, related to the Passion of the Christ, that culminated in a final revelation that occurred the following evening. After making a full recovery from her affliction, she wrote an account of each of her visions in a manuscript called the Short Text. After taking her vows and becoming an anchoress, she continued to develop her ideas over several decades and produced a more extended version of her visions called the Long Text, which was first published in 1670 by English monk Serenus de Cressy. Originally written in Middle English, because Julian specifically wanted her text to be accessible to the common person, it was translated into modern English by Scottish translator Grace Warwick in 1901, and has become the version of Revelations of Divine Love that we read today. The parallels between Julian's life and the reality of the coronavirus outbreak we are going through today are staggering. Julian had voluntarily chosen a life of self-isolation and was witness outside her window to one of the most crippling health crises that her world had yet seen. She would also have been a witness to changing political and social realities that were taking place in Norwich at the time. In 1381, the Peasants' Revolt was a major uprising that raged across large parts of England, a result of the economic disparities caused by the Black Death and the high taxes that were a result of the ongoing 100 Years' War. It erupted into violent confrontations in many parts of the country, especially Norwich. She would have been a witness to the continued religious strife that had been plaguing England between Catholics and Lollards, a Protestant Christian movement that was protesting against the wealth of the church leaders. The Lollards and their sympathizers were routinely rounded up by the local authorities and were publicly burned at the stake in the town square as an example to others. As St. Julian's Church sits on Main Street in Norwich, it is likely that if Julian did not personally witness the executions from the window of her cell, she would almost certainly have been able to hear the screams that came from the street below. In the midst of the world that Julian knew that was in chaos, Julian would have been alone in her cell with little to divert her attention from contemplating what was going on in the world outside of the church. This was a long time before any kind of television or social media would have existed. Julian would have likely agonized about what was going on in the world and does not shy away from discussing the topic of suffering, made all the more profound by the fact that she was undoubtedly confronting the real possibility of her own mortality at the time. Revelation 13, which contains the famous quote, is Julian's desperate plea to the divine to provide her some sort of answer to everything that was going on, not unlike the similar conversation that takes place in Reverend Meg's song between her and Julian. The original quote in Revelations of Divine Love is, "All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." The use of shall instead of will seems insignificant, as both words are used interchangeably today. The modern English translation would have favored the word will because it was more familiar to readers. But the word shall had a completely different context in the Middle English of Julian's day. In the 14th century Middle English that Julian was writing in, shall would have meant must. All must be well, and all must be well, and all manner of things must be well. In other words, the answer that Julian was receiving from the divine was a reassurance and a definitive guarantee that everything was going to be well, because the divine had already decided that it was going to be well. This, for me, is the perfect message of hope for this time of global pandemic. In the midst of what seems to be the darkest and most insurmountable of odds, there will always be hope that will overcome everything and help see us through to better and more promising times. This is exactly what Julian was trying to get Reverend Meg to see in the song. That hope may end up manifesting itself in various forms, be they spirit, tenderness, love, or the company of friends, as Julian suggests, but they will always be present and bigger than all of the darkness that is present in the world. It also tells us that hope is transcendent. It will continue to be passed down and continue through time to conquer whatever darkness may be present. The message that we are left with is that we must find the moments of hope in the midst of crisis and chaos, however hidden and hard to find that they may be, and kindle them and keep them close to us. They are some of the only things that we have that are giving us a reason to get up and keep going in order to see another day through. But just as much as we need that spark of hope for ourselves and our lives, we need to make sure that we are finding ways to pass that hope along to others who are seeking it out and have yet to find it. Just as the divine was able to do for Julian, just as Julian was able to do for the Reverend Meg Barnhouse, and just as Reverend Meg Barnhouse has tried to do for us, may it be something we do for others. You never know. It just may be somebody's answer to the question of what is getting you through and feeding your soul at this moment. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen. Shalom. Assalamu alaikum. Namaste. Thank you all so much.
Never has it been more true than now. We extinguish this flame, but the sparks within us remain alight. From each of us in our supposed solitude, the signals buzz and hum, sparkling through space to one another, connecting us invisibly, but palpably. We are one, and from every window, our light shines. Our service is ended. Your service has begun. Go in peace, go in joy, and go in love.